Hello and welcome to this Carveco Maker tutorial. My name is Leighton and today we're going to be taking a look at turning a photograph into a relief, and then we're going to machine it using something called photo V-carving. And I'll show you how you can do this. Some people think that this is sort of a bit of a black art. It's pretty easy to do, to be completely honest, and I'm going to show you how you can do it and what to watch out for, and just give you some tips on how to create these types of V-carvings. So if I take a look down here, you can see that this is the picture that I want to turn into a V-carving. And a lot of people say that you need to use the right picture. I'll be completely honest, whenever I've done this, pretty much most pictures seem to work, as long as you follow a few simple rules. You may need to tweak settings, but there's literally two settings that you would need to tweak. And I'll show you how to do it. So here you can see one that I created earlier this year. It's just a picture that I've done for my wife. And this is the sort of thing that I'm talking about. So if I were to zoom in on this, maybe this good looking chap at the top here, which is me, you can see that this is actually just a piece of MDF. It's a piece of melamine. So it's got a white laminate on the top of the MDF. So all that's happening here is that the V bit is going across and just scoring the white off it. And it gives it this image effect, so you can actually see the image. If you look close up, it doesn't look that great. It's when you look far away that you can actually see it. Now what you need to do is make sure that you get these white areas, because that's what gives it the contrast. Okay, if you go too deep, so you can see down the bottom left here, there may have been a bit of dust or something underneath the material, so it's gone a little bit deeper here, and you can see that it's not showing any of the detail. So what you need is these white areas for this particular piece, which show the detail, so you need that contrast. So if you start to get something that looks like the bottom left, it's not working, because it's not going to, you're going too deep and too close together, so it's not going to give you the desired effect. Okay, so let's zoom out so you can have another look at that. Okay, so this is actually hanging up in my hallway at the moment. So let's take a look at Carveco Maker and I'll show you how you can make these types of images. So as I said, I'm going to go to, let's go to a new model. Now, if you take a look at this image that I want to photo V-carve, you can see that this is square. Okay, now what I'm going to do is deliberately do this so it's not right, it's not correct. And I'll show you how you can get around it. This is just if you set up the wrong size for the model. Okay, so let's go to Carveco Maker. I'm going to create a new model. And I'm going to give it a width and a height. So I'm going to give it a width of 12 inches and a height of 24 inches. Now, I know that this just needs to be about 12 inches square, so I'm making sure that I'm elongating it basically in the height. I'll show you how you can make this smaller. Okay, resolution, I'm just going to crank that right the way up to the top. Set my datum or my origin, I'll just set that to be the bottom left. So you can change it by clicking any of the four corners or the centre. The units, I'll just do this in inches and select OK. So what this does, it opens up Carveco Maker, places you within the 3D view. Okay, so what we need to do is to import that image now. Now, this is a little bit different if you're used to using the previous program where you would just literally open the image and then you would enter a figure. Now, personally, I prefer to do it this way because you have more control over the relief, so you can resize it. The older method, it had that aspect ratio locked, so there was no way that you could resize it if you wanted to. So I'd rather do it this way personally. So if I go to relief and then select import and then import again, select that, come down to there, which is the image, and select open. Now what this will do, it will open that image, place it as a relief and as floating clip art. Now, if I were to zoom out, you can see that this is absolutely huge at the moment. Now, that's because it's got a width of 2000 by 2000 inches. So the program believes that this was created in inches. It's actually 2000 pixels. So what we need to do is just resize this to the size that we actually want. So if I were to change the width of that, now if I were to do it at the moment and change that to say 11 and then select apply, you'll see that it just makes it smaller in the width. That's because I haven't got the aspect ratio locked. So if I just undo that, and if you undo something, it will take you out of the transform tool. So click the clip art again. So anything that is blue like this is floating clip art. So I can just grab that and I can just move it around. Okay, go back into the transform tool. To do that, you can press T on the keyboard or select here. And that will take you back in there. So let's turn on the lock this time. So here you can see I've got this padlock. So I'm going to change the width of that to be, let's say 11.5 and then select apply. Now you notice that this goes really small and you'll see that my 0 plane is really small here too. Now with this selected, what I can do is press F9 on the keyboard and that will place it in the center of that model. And now if I zoom in, you can see that it's been placed in the center of that model. Now, I can just move that down. So if I grab it, you can see that it floats around. If I press Alt on the keyboard, it gives me a 90-degree angle snap. So I can just start bringing that down to around about there and let go. Now, if I were to rotate this around, you can see that this is really, really high. You can move it up or down like so. Now, the trick to doing these photo V carvings is the height and the step over of the tool. What I've learnt in the past is that the height needs to be about 40 thou or 1 millimeter. You can sort of deviate from that, say 1.2 millimeters or say 50 thou, but normally it tends to be around about that sort of size. I'll be completely honest with you, I used to have problems doing these, and that was because I used to set the height at around 3 millimeters and it wouldn't turn out properly, and it would take me quite a while to actually do these photo V carvings. So what you need to do is set the height to be around about 40 thousandths of an inch or 1 millimeter if you're working in metric. So let's set it to 0.04 and then select apply. Okay, so that's all that you need. You don't need it to be massively deep or anything. The V-bit's just going to just glide over the top of this, and this is what's going to give it the effect of an image. Okay, so when you're done with that, what you can do is either press enter on the keyboard and it will paste this relief down, or you can come down to the bottom here and select paste. So that will paste that down. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I need to do with this now. So this is entirely up to you if you want to do this. I tend to do this because it gives me a better end result, which is to smooth this relief a little bit. So if we go over to here to smooth relief, click on it and you'll get this strength slider bar. Now, if you go all the way to the top, you can see it really smooths it out, and this isn't what you want at all because you lose a lot of the detail in the relief and this won't work. Okay, so what you need to do is just do this really slightly. I normally do maybe about 10%, and that should do. You want to still keep a lot of the detail in there. So if I apply that and cancel it, all that does, it just gets rid of any sharp areas on this relief. Now what I need to do is I need to sort out the model. Now obviously you may have set this up properly. I just wanted to show you this just in case you set up the wrong size model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box. So if I draw a box, I'll just hover over down to the bottom left there. You see how the cursor changes? So that's telling me that it will snap or lock onto that bottom left hand point. So if I go there and then let's go up to about there. Now you can see that I did actually want this to be 12 inches by 12 inches, so that seems to be right. If you wanted it to be any other size, you would just type in the sizes there. So if I select create and then cancel that, now with that vector or that rectangle selected, what I'm going to do is crop this relief. So if I go to model and then select crop, what it will do, it will remove the area at the top. Okay, so now if you take a look on the right hand side, you can see that the artwork is 12 inches by 12 inches. So it's now the right size. So just a little tip, if you need to make something smaller, just draw a vector and then you can crop the model. Okay, so I'll delete that vector and this is ready to be machined pretty much now. Now what I've done, I've just created a little bit of a border around this because I like to have a little border where the V-bit is finishing, and it gives you this nice sort of stitching effect where the tool is stepping over. Right, so this is ready to be machined now. So to do this, to machine them, what you do is go to toolpaths, and then what you want to do is create a 3D toolpath, which is a machine relief toolpath. So if I select that, just move that over. The area to machine, I'm going to machine the whole of the relief, and then finishing options, click to select. And let's turn off my metric tools and use an inch tool. And I'm going to use, let's say this 1¼ inch 90° V-bit. Now, another thing to bear in mind is the actual V-bit that you use. If you were to use something that's larger than 90 degrees, obviously because of the angle of the V, it won't be able to go down very deep. So you won't get that contrast. So I tend to normally use a 90° to do these. I've never actually tried to use a 60°, but I would imagine that that would give you an even better finish. So I'm going to use this 90°. Click select, And make sure that you've got raster on as the strategy. And what I would tend to do is normally give this an angle. If you do this straight, it normally doesn't look as good. So what I'll do, I'll just set an angle up. Now you can do these at whatever angle that you like. Okay, so I'm going to just do it at 45 degrees. And then let's define the material. Let's say the material is 1/2 inch thick. Okay, and you can see the model thickness is 41 feb. So select OK. And if I rotate around, you can see that the material has been set up. Now, I'm not messing around with pretty much one of the most important factors when doing this, which is the step over. I'm going to just calculate this and see what it does to start with. So if I calculate now, and what I'm going to do is right click on the machine relief and I'm going to simulate this. So this is the type of thing that it does. So the V bit is following that contour of the photograph. I'll just fast forward this. And you can see that it doesn't look very good at the moment. And that's all to do with the step over. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to change the step over because this isn't working. So if we click on the drop down here for the tool, you can see that the step over is 0.3125. So let's change that to, let's say 0.2. Let's see what that does. And then let's simulate this again. Now there's a lot of trial and error, especially with this step over. So you have to play about with it a few times just to make sure that you get the right step over. So let me fast forward this again. So you can see that it's starting to look right, but even now it's still not the right step over. So let's change it to, let's say 0.1. Now this may be too close together. So if I reset that and let's simulate that. Okay, so that's not looking too bad at the moment. That's quite good. You can see if you zoom out, you can see the kid's face and the dog. Maybe just tweak it just a touch. Let's say 0.09 for that and calculate. So if I reset that, simulate that again, you can see that that looks quite good. Now, if I wanted to, I could add a depth color to that. So apply that. I could change the material. Maybe not gold. Let's try a wooden. Let's try it a little bit smaller. And reset that and simulate all toolpaths. That seems to be a little bit better. I think I'm happy with that. So you can see what's happening is the V bit is just going in to those areas on the photograph. And it's leaving you with this picture. Now I'll show you what happens if you do this too close together. So if I delete the simulation, let's change the step over to be 0.01. Okay, now this is going to look awful. So if I simulate that, you can see what's happening is it's going over it too close and it's not giving you that contrast. Okay, so if I turn off the depth color, you can see it's basically just carving a 3D image. So you might as well just do this with a ball nose. So let's make this a little bit higher. Just going to see what this looks like. So there's a lot of trial and error with this step over. Okay, so that looks quite good. So I think I'm going to leave it there at 0.07 inches step over. So I can add the depth color to that if I want to. You can see that that's given me the effect that I wanted. Now it's entirely up to you if you want to do the border like this. What you could do is, if I just delete this simulation, I could have kept the vector that I created, or I could go to vector and then create and then relief boundary. I'm just going to click create. If I turn on the vectors here, toggle vector visibility, it gives me a vector. So that's what I've just created. I've just basically created a boundary around that relief. So now the area to machine, rather than the whole relief, I can do this as selected vectors. Now, if you wanted to, you could go really advanced with this, and you could create a vector around the boy and his dog, and then do two photo V carvings and have one going in one direction and one going in the other. So you could just assign it to vectors. Okay, so if I select to calculate now, okay, so let's do this inside the vector and then select calculate now. So if I simulate this, you can see that it's not machining that outside anymore. So it's leaving me with this nice border. So let's fast forward this. Okay, so that looks quite good. Okay, so that's basically how you do a photo V-carve in Carveco Maker. So let's close that and I'll show you how you can save this to your CNC. So if I go to Toolpaths and then go to Save Toolpaths, and then all that I need to do is literally browse, and let's save it, go to the desktop, let's call this V-carved photo. Let's go in there, let's call it boy and dog, and then select open. So it's just going to save into that folder. And then all that I need to do is find the machine file format. So this is basically a converter from this program, Carveco Maker, into a format that your CNC machine will understand. So lots and lots of different what we call post processors here, and more than likely to find your machine on here. So what I'm going to do is just do, let's say, a Mac 3 or Mac 4, and then select save. So if I find that folder now, and then take a look in there, you can see that I've got this tab file, which is just literally commands and coordinates telling my machine how to machine this. So if I right click on it, if you haven't got this option to just open, select open with, and then use WordPad or any word processing application, and it will just open this file and you can take a look at it. Okay, so that's basically this job ready to send to the CNC machine. Okay, so that brings an end to this tutorial. I hope that you found it useful. It's very easy to do, providing that you follow a few simple rules. The first one is to make sure that your thickness is correct. Normally about 40 thousandths of an inch or 1 millimeter. You can adjust that to suit, but don't go too deep because it will not work. Make sure that you use the correct V-bit. So you want to normally use something that's about 90 degrees or maybe a 60, something that I've never tried myself. And then what you need to do is adjust the step over. So the step over is the most important one. You need to make sure that you get that correct. So you need to tweak that until you see the detail properly. If you go too far, then you'll remove a lot of the detail. Then you might as well just use a ball nose tool to machine it and just machine a 3D relief.